Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Devana Robady, and I'm on the events committee for the Surface Design Association. We are a membership not-for-profit focused on contemporary fiber and textile art, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to this week's Textile Talk, Traditions and Techniques in Beading. Textile Talk webinars are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, the Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, and the Surface Design Association. First, a few housekeeping announcements. This is a webinar, so your screens and your mics aren't showing. We really welcome questions, which we'll answer at the end of the artist presentations. Please submit them in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We're really honored to bring you free and inspiring Textile Talks programs, and we really respectfully ask you to be courteous when you engage with the speakers, moderators, and the other participants. Your chat comments can be seen by everyone. And please note that the Q&A and the chat are different things. So if you want to ask a question, make sure not to put it in the chat, but put it in the Q&A so that we can see it easier. If you prefer not to see the notifications from the chat, you can click the button on the chat there and toggle them on or off. So today's talk is Traditions and Techniques in Beading. It highlights an exciting range of approaches included in SDA's winter journal of the same name. The Surface Design Journal editor, Elizabeth Kozlowski, explains the issue takes us on a journey across time and space from contemporary North America to Uganda to China in 2700 BC, all the way to the planets and stars billions of light years away from Earth. And it all celebrates the traditions and techniques of beading. Today, we are joined by artists and contributors Sébastien Carré and Anette Millington, who will speak about their beading practice that has transcended time. And if you're interested in reading the entire journal, you can purchase it and learn more. We have additional links to how to do that in the chat. So our first presenter, welcome Anette Millington. Anette is an artist, designer, and educator whose practice is centered on pattern. Annette's work includes textile sculptures, embellished wall hangings, as well as speculative design and material provocation developed in collaboration across all disciplines. Focusing on textile embellishment, she considers relationships between communication and ornamentation. Annette is the Associate Director of the MFA Textiles Program and Assistant Professor of Fashion Systems and Materiality at the Parsons School of Design. Her work was recently on view at the Center for Craft in Asheville, North Carolina, in the exhibition Material Reasoning, which highlighted the recipients of the center's materials-based research grant recipients. Annette attended the School of Visual Arts for her MFA and received a BFA from the Massachusetts College of Arts. Welcome, Anette.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here today. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen, which I'm hoping everyone can see. Can I get a thumbs up?
Looks good.
All right, thank you. So thank you again for having me today, Surface Design Association. And I'm thrilled to be here to be speaking about this article, Beading Material and Meaning in the Parsons MFA Textile Program. So today I will have the joy of sharing with you student work centered on bead. And we will begin our journey together today here in this virtual example of our studio. As you can see, our studio is a busy and a buzzing place. It is centered around exploration, and we have several students working in bead. The Parsons MFA Textiles program is located in New York City and is directed by our founding director, Preeti Gobinoff, who you can see featured here in this slide. I also wanted to share with you several of our core faculty. You can see here Gabby Asfor from 3 is 4. You can also see Lee Adelkor circling with students. Lee established this program. And here you can see myself actually doing a bead demo with students as well. I want to thank Travis Fitch and Sujin Khan who along with myself and Gabby and Preeti have mentored many of the student works that we'll be enjoying today. The textiles program at Parsons is centered on sustainability, social justice, and well-being. We focus on craft and creativity. The program takes an interdisciplinary approach to textiles. Students make meaningful things and they find meaning through making. The program is a community which is centered in our open studios and also allows students to engage in the community beyond through industry projects and our atelier curriculum. The MFA program is very specifically focused on individual students' interests and is centered around mentorship and conversation that allows every student to grow and develop their unique capstone thesis work. We're going to look today at beading and modular embellishment that has come out of the program. We currently welcomed our 5th generation of students, and today we'll be looking at work from our first 3 graduating classes. We're going to see beading in which students are making their very own beads through practices of material development. We're going to see students who are creating new structure out of bead material. And we will see students who use beading as a primary way to tell stories. Within the program, textile mastery grows over time through a process of extensive making, refinement that comes through conversation and mentorship, and student introspection. Again, all of our students are really formulating their very own approach to textile practice and textile making. Within that, though, we want students to get really excited about new craft possibilities. And so within our first semester, we are often seeding exploration and new material. Here you can see some very initial explorations of students working with bead. This might be done through mini faculty demos, very much through peer sharing amongst students, and also through prompts and conceptual exercises. We are always inviting contemporary makers into our studio as one of the most important ways that our students can see contemporary practices in action. Here you see on the left a recent ECAT presentation, and in the center here we see the incredible beadwork of Jamie Ukuma, who visited us our first year at Parsons. Through this kind of engagement and investment and inspiration, we have had several students center on bead or incorporate bead into their thesis work. Jacob is an example here from our first generation of graduates, and you can see Jacob's seated bio beads as well as text that's embedded into knit material. Here we have Ishwan, who is working in biomaterial. And I've included this slide because although it is not traditionally bead, I think it's interesting to see the way in which she's using 3D molding, 3D printed molding, biomaterial to create a kind of modular embellishment that can be repeated and applied and grown structurally in ways that remind me very much of bead structure. Here we have Uen from our second generation of graduates. And again, this is a biomaterial that is built up through repetition. It is embossed and laser cut. And Lika, who uses bead as an incredibly powerful communication tool in her textile comic satire, which includes embroidery, bead, felt, among other materials. I was thrilled to highlight the program within the recent Surface Design issue. And I really wanted to spotlight 2 graduates who graduated last year from our program for their incredible contributions to contemporary beading. Here we have Iradita, who is also teaching with us now in the program. She specializes in biomaterial and has created these incredible bio beads. Iratita's mission in her work is to replace toxic petroleum products used within fashion and embellishment systems with regenerative and healthy materials. In order to do this, she is inventing her own bead recipes. She's working with algae to formulate a variety of beads with a multitude of texture and color and shape, as well as change properties, including bioluminescence that she embeds in the bead by using jellyfish protein. And here we can see an example of this incredible work. This is the beaded piece. It has been exposed to sunlight, and now it is quite literally glowing. She's discussed her interest in this kind of interactivity as a way to bring value and also inspire long-term care and multiple usages of her design products. I find the work to be incredibly inspiring in terms of its textile science. It's also incredibly beautiful. She's talked about beading as an interest that she has had long-term, and she speaks about the process of beading as one that's quite personal and also sensory experience for her as she's making. This quote here from the designer herself: "Beading is very delicate and fragile and something of value because of the human contribution that goes into it. When beading, I always remind myself to recognize interconnectedness, which is essential to form a balance between people and the planet. This is rooted in circularity, reciprocity, and communication." We'll move now to Alyssa's work. Alyssa also is in our Generation 3 graduates. And we see in this work of Alyssa, this continued commitment to thinking about the potential of bead to speak socially and environmentally and personally. Alyssa is using her bead embellishment to advocate for animal welfare, and she's challenging industries which use animal products through her beading. Her work includes the felting of plant-based fiber. She begins with a machine knitted understructure, which she then felts plant-based material onto and beads into. She also uses natural dye in her work. The result are these kinds of structures. Some elements of them read quite like animal carcass. Other examples are more specifically items that she connects with the fashion industry, such as sweaters and bags. Her work provokes a reverent care and awareness of the animal body and being while interrogating human construction. Here is her quote: "I'm using the luxury associated with beading to depict wounds, taking luxury and flipping it on its head to show the suffering behind many of our industries." So with that, I will pause. We will talk more during the Q&A session. I really do invite you to stay in touch and to get to know the MFA program at Parsons. Follow us on Instagram, visit our website. I also invite you to get to know my work. I'm teaching from what inspires me within my own making, and my own practice is connected to larger conversations of pattern and embellishment. Thank you so much for your time and your attention today.
Thank you, Annette. That was amazing. Our second presenter is Sébastien Carré, and Sébastien combines flora, fauna, and the natural world to create objects reminiscent of organic forms and landscapes. His jewelry is conceived to make us rethink our relationship to our body, to others, and to nature, and to help us realize that all living forms are bound together to provide a future on this planet. Welcome, Sébastien.
Thank you. Thank you, Devana. And thank you to the Surface Design Association for inviting me to write the article for the magazine and also to be part of this talk. And I think it's really interesting to be able to express what I'm doing with the beads. So I'm going to share my screen also here. And so, okay. So my name is Sébastien Carré. I'm living in Strasbourg, so it's close to it's in the border between France and Germany. And I'm a jewelry artist and also a curator. And so I did my study in Strasbourg. At the beginning, we were taught more the regular process of making jewelry with metal smithing. But then, as it is in an art school, we were actually able to work in all the different other workshops of the school, like glass, ceramics, wood. And so we could be actually trying to use the most specific material that will be able to enhance the concept of the piece we were trying to do. And so when I was starting to work with archery, I decided to work about the body, because there was a link in between where the piece were going to be shown and the inside of it. And so I decided to focus more on different parts of the body. So here you have the heart, for example, or for the spinal cord. And so as I was representing something living, I was really trying to make a modular process with multiplying elements that will be symbolizing in a way the cell mitosis. And so that's why there is ring and chainmail here, there is leather, there is woods, there is also bones to symbolize different parts of the body. But then after that, I realized that when I was trying to symbolize different things or put different meaning, I had to add another technique upon of it. So for example, here, this necklace is to speak about the glass bones disease. And so there is glass and porcelain part of it, and the textile is making the connection in between. And so that's when also I started to use a little bit more beads in the pieces. Sometimes it was more aesthetic to make the work, but after that I found meaning in the use of beads, because the first part I show you, it was for my first diploma, so my bachelor degree. And in between my first diploma and my master degree, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And so I had to change actually the process of making works, because I was not able to stay seated for a long time in a bench, and I had to find new ways of working to deal with the lack of strength. So yeah, that's when I really started to work actually with different kind of techniques, including the beads. And so at the beginning, I symbolized more what part of my body was afflicted, with the stomach here, for example, or the problem of malabsorption that was made using nylon thread. And so it was looking like it was not going to keep any nutrition if you were eating that way. Or here, the last one, it's called the shelter. And so when I was feeling good, I could be wearing like a tie, and the face is in the body, so it's symbolizing everything is okay. But if I was feeling pain, I could be turning around the necklace, and it could be turning in a face, and that way I was still connecting to other people, but I didn't have to connect verbally with them. And so I could stay focused on myself. And so when I was making pieces, I was actually realizing I was following the different stage of the grief described by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And so I decided to keep on working on that direction. So the first pieces were more about the shock and actually understanding what was happening. So here also the DNA is because like most of the people afflicted by autoimmune disease, we are not knowing if there is genetic predisposition on that part. For the hanger, it was actually a necklace that is 7 meters long. It's to symbolize the intestines. So it's at the scale of the intestines. And it was really something that was really therapeutic for me, because I made every ring by hand. And after that, it was embroidered. So it took 6 months, because Actually, it took 6 months to the treatment to be really working. And so during that time, I have a lot of pain, and the repetitive process was really helping me actually to actually deal with the pain in a way, and also to put my intention to something different. And so the third stage, it's bargaining. In that part, I was more focused on speaking about the treatment I could be taking. For example, I have also inflammation in the back. And so in homeopathic treatment, they are giving bamboo drops to help it. And so I use the bamboo to symbolize actually to symbolize the bones and the spinal cord. Then after that, the fourth stage is depression. So for that part, I used film strip that were played in the theater I was frequenting when I was a child. And so for me, it was something linked to memories. And so to symbolize the weight of the memories of the previous identity before sickness, I decided to make something that was feeling like it's really light actually, but it was a more psychological weight on your shoulders. And so that's how I decided to symbolize the depression. And then after that, the final stage, it's the acceptance. And on that part, it's when really the beading work was really turning important for me, because I was more focusing on making pieces that was symbolizing the inflammation. And for me, the inflammation is something that is really more conceptual. We don't really know how to express or to show it in a way, if it's something that is growing on a structure, or in the other way, it's something that is pushing the structure. And so it was really interesting to actually make a collection about the inflammation. And so when I was actually working on making the inflammation project, I started to use gemstone beads also, and I put them next to regular beadwork. And so it was really for me a way to make us think about maybe we can find a positive in every situation. Sometimes you just have to change the way you are looking at things. And so that's why I decided also to use gemstones. And the gemstone, it's not the first things you are going to see, but it's there. And so that is important for me. It's also questioning the preciosity of things. Sometimes it's not what you show obviously to others. Sometimes it's also what you keep for you. And so at the end of that, I did this also another 7 meters necklace. And this one, it was more because during all this, the treatment I could be taking, for example, in homeopathic treatment, there was someone with silver, gold, copper. And I was really thinking like, okay, maybe the cells that are actually attacking me are jewelers, and I'm kind of their gods in a way. And if I give them things to work with, they will be too busy working on jewelry and they will not be busy thinking about attacking me. And so that's why I decided to call it Oh My God. And so it was actually starting a new way of thinking, that is maybe if I am the landscape for all these bacteria and the cells living in me, maybe like we could be changing the scales. And I also realized that when I was actually making the inflammation projects, for example, this bracelet, a lot of time it was actually looking kind of a coral reef. And so for me, it was really interesting to see like, okay, so symbolizing something that is really tiny, microscopic scale, it was also looking like a landscape. And so that's when I decided actually to work on a new concept also of organic landscape. So for example, here the landscape, it's a volcano. So around the volcano, it's film strip. So now when I'm making pieces, it's more to speak about culture or society. And so it's to symbolize the culture is all living around volcano because it's fertile grounds. And here it was a piece is made for an award in Italy, and so it was to speak. It was an award related to wine, and so I symbolized either also the grapes in some parts, but when you are looking from further, it's looking like an aerial view of a field, a vineyard. And also there is the beadwork that are symbolizing all the different rope of rosé, red wine or white wine. And so it was really an in-between. When you are looking at it, it's an organism on your hand. And when you are looking closer or drinking the wine, you are enter the landscape. So here it's a kind of a bay or a tropical island. And to keep it organic, I also use the pink work with beads to make it really organic and to say like, yeah, to make us realize we are all actually interconnected. And so in most of these pieces, I'm trying to mix vegetal, animal, and mineral elements, and to make us realize we are all made of the same principal elements, and we should be working all together if we want to have a future on this planet. Here it's also kind of a waterfall, so you can see there is seashells that are used like beads, there is gemstones, there is beadwork, and this one is actually also bioluminescence. I was not knowing it, and I find it one day when I was visiting an exhibition with a black light, and I was really surprised to see it was glowing. And so after that, also a lot of pieces are made about with an ecological idea behind it. So for example, these pieces was made to speak about the destruction of a big forest near Strasbourg to build a highway. And for me, it was such a stupid idea. I had to make actually pieces to express my anger about this project and the destruction of a forest for a really tiny highway that is not helping anything about the pollution. And so that's why I decided to make this piece. These pieces were made also for speaking about the black tide that we saw right at the end of the confinement. And I was like, okay, maybe the nature have a chance to get better. And then after that, 1 week after we were out, there was actually a ship sinking in near Mauritius Island. And so it was to speak about that. These pieces to speak about the blanching of the coral reef, but it's like when it's getting white, the coral reef, it's still looking like a coral reef. And so we are not really careful about that. And so I decided to show it in red because we are more used to red to symbolize the blood. And here the latest pieces also I'm working with is to speak about society and the fact like, okay, if we need as many different species to live together, we first also need to work together as a human species. And so that's why the film strip here is used to symbolize a society. And so on one part, it's going to be in a special shape. And on the other side, it's going to be another one. But the both can work together in the same society. And so we don't have to try to force others to be like us. Also, sometimes the difference can be something interesting. On this piece, it was the same kind of idea, showing two different cultures. So on one part, it's something really strict. So it's a really strict society. Everything should be in order. Everyone should be turning the same. On the other side, it's going to be another kind of society that is more free. People can be on the left, on the right. They can be bigger or smaller. And the idea was to make them look the same length and to symbolize like all humans are equal and we should be like focusing more on that. And finally, this piece also was made to symbolize the interconnection of different living form. So for example, there is the trees and all the vegetal, there is the sea world, there is like the humans. And so it was symbolizing different kind of living form connected together, and the flourishing or something growing here. And so it was a way to symbolize through this necklace, we are all interconnected. Finally, I wanted to show these pieces because it was made and created for an exhibition that was exhibiting in several museums in the United States. The exhibition was Stolen Sisters, and I was invited by Teresa Faris, the teacher of the metal workshop of the Whitewaters University in Wisconsin. And so it was to speak about the disappearance and the death of the Native American woman. And so as it was really, I was really impressed to be the only non-Native American to be able to express what I was feeling about these topics. I wanted to make something that was really strong. And so for this piece, I used the beads work to symbolize at the beginning. There is a lot of culture that are symbolized by the blue beads. And then after that, also the red beads are symbolizing the death or disappearance of these women. After that, we are losing their track, and so the transparent beads are symbolizing their disappearance. And so it was also a way to say that losing half of the society of the Native American by the loss of all these women, it was losing also part of the society and all the cultural elements of the society. And then after that, there was only blood left. And so that's why I decided to make the drape of the beads. And so also to symbolize this loss of the society, I symbolize it by the braid that is macrame, Japanese paper that is worked as a macrame. And so you can see the color is disappearing. And so at the end, there is no color left. And so, yes, so that's the end of the of the presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Sébastien. All right, so we're going to enter into our Q&A section. Annette, can you turn your camera back on and join us? We have some really great questions in the chat. A lot of people want to know, our first questions are for you, Annette. Can you define biological material or biological beads? What do you mean by that?
Yes, absolutely. And I just pasted, hopefully everyone can see an answer in the Q&A. So when I'm saying biomaterial, what I'm talking about is a material which is made from something biological. And many of the examples that we saw today, students were using algae or kelp. That's what Iratita was using. Other students might use cellulose. There was a sugar that was used in Jacob's beads. Uen's work was using a seashell, chitosan, that was in there, and other students might work with mushroom. Students typically are working with these materials when they have, well, one of two intentions are often shared by students working with biomaterial. Sometimes students might be interested in kind of collaborating in a design process with something that is living, like if you were using kombucha per se. Other times students are really interested in replacing plastics with a material that is biodegradable, which is one of Iratita's main objectives. The way that students work, it's like they make these recipes. So there's a lot of cooking, and then there is extruding or placing of material in molds. Sometimes there's putting material in sheets, and then these materials are manipulated, cut, and turned into what we saw today.
That is really cool.
And I think, did we put Iratita's website in the chat? If not, I'll put that in. I'll also put Uen's website in the chat. I think that the students themselves do the best job speaking to their process. So I'll throw that in the chat just to make sure that the students are represented as they would like to be.
Great. Some of the next questions are for Sébastien. Several people would like to know how do you use the Japanese paper in your art?
So the Japanese paper is looking kind of raffia thread. And so I use that like kind of a macrame. When we were young in France, we were calling it like Brazilian bracelet. So it's you making knots on the line of the Japanese paper. And so it's kind of a macrame technique, and you're making knots. And so by changing the colors, you can actually make different kind of elements using these techniques. And so, yeah, it's a technique, but sadly, I can't find this kind of paper anymore. So I'm finishing what I got here. And then after that, I will have to change process in a way. But it's really strong, like it's really a paper. It's not like raffia that is going to break really quickly. The Japanese paper, all the fiber are in one thread, so it's really strong.
And a couple people were asking, did you use a support system or a wire mesh? And one person was very specific. They said, in all bound together at one of your pieces, what is the base onto which all of the beads have been stitched?
So in all bound together, I actually, the upper part is made with the macrame techniques with the Japanese paper, and the bottom part of it, in which I did the embroidery with beads, it's actually make with a crochet needle technique. And so I'm using the crochet needle. And so a lot of time it's a mix of different kind of textile techniques. I was taught when I was young all this kind of technique by several women of my family. So one grandmother taught me how to knit, another one taught me how to do the embroidery. My mother taught me how to do the crochet needle techniques. And I have memories also of my great-grandmother when I was in holidays in her place. She was doing beadwork, making tubes of beads to make a necklace. And so actually I combined them all together to create my own way of working. But most of the time when I'm working with the beads, it's the peyote point. So it's actually made with a needle technique. So I take one bead and I put in it. And after that, it can be kind of making a net. If you are decided to use 3 or 5 beads, after that, on each line, you can make kind of a net. And so you can really turn it organic.
You know, it's really interesting to me. I know I have an autoimmune disease, and at that time I switched to really intense handwork. Mm-hmm. And I know other artists who also got diagnosed with autoimmune diseases who made this switch to intense, intricate handwork. And I'm just wondering what is that doing? Why are we doing that? And I wanted to ask you, other than like conceptually, you made all these conceptual pieces about it. How did your disease affect your approach to making? And did you mentioned you were too weak to sit at a stool, and so you kind of modified. Were there any other things that the disease itself affected you to change the way that you made artwork?
Yeah, so actually at the beginning, when I was still being diagnosed and I was hospitalized, it was the beginning of my master's degree. So I had to start thinking of what I was going to write about my thesis. And so I was thinking, okay, it's going to be such a huge difference in my life. I should be like actually maybe doing something out of it also. And so I started my research and I found Rebecca Horn work. And she's an artist that started to work with textiles also due to an illness, because she was working mainly with resin. And because of the smell of it, she gets sick and she has to be laid down during a long time. And she started to work with textile because of that. And I was thinking, okay, that's funny, because I was already starting to work a little with textile. And so I was thinking, okay, with that, I could be working everywhere. I could be working when I was going in the hospital, for example. And also that's why it's really colorful, because some of of the pieces I was doing in the hospital, everything is white all around you. And so you have the beads and you can be looking at it and you are outside of the hospital thinking of something different. But also it was also a way to deal with the pain, because at the beginning, the treatment took a long time to work. And so during all that time, I was in pain during six months. And so sometimes I was not able to sleep for 4 days in a row. And so I had to find a new way of dealing with the pain. So that's when I started to look at movies without subtitle to get to my brain focused on something. And the repetitive process of the beadwork was also helping, because it was focusing another part of my brain in something different. So I think it was really therapeutic for me to work that way. And so after that, I get so used to working with the beads, with all the different kind of textile techniques. It was really difficult not to do it, actually. And so it's something I have to do nearly every day, or I'm feeling I'm missing something if I can't work, actually. And it's easy to travel with, so it was also a big help.
Yeah, it's interesting you said the therapeutic repetition of the work, which was another interesting fact that I know all the other artists I know would say that too. I have a question for Annette, I'm sorry. How do you see technology shaping the future of textile design and fiber art based on your experience at Parsons?
I mean, it's a good question, especially for a program that we talk a lot about craft and technology. And I would guess that for the majority of our faculty working with students, we are using these words, craft and technology. One sounds old, one sounds new and or up and coming, but I actually don't think we see that much difference between the premise, right? So the idea of a technology is that it's a certain tool, and you have a tool set that can provide an opportunity for a design, right? Sébastien was talking about creating a kind of bead structure, one that has different variations of grid-like forms that give you possibilities as a designer. So, you know, when our students are working with a laser cutter, they're thinking about perforation in a flat material, but they're thinking about perforation just like another student who might be making hand lace. So a part of what we are doing within the program at Parsons, I think, is actually taking an interest in an understanding of technology as something that may be more familiar to students than even the craft. And I think through that, we can then say, hey, this is a new tool, but it's doing something very much like. Let's sort of find the origin story of that particular approach. And if we go back and we're working there, what else then maybe could we imagine and could we take forward? For me, this is very much my joy in the particular work as well, is that we, I think, are refinding for young students in art and design schools many craft practices and approaches, and students really enjoy working with their hands for many of the reasons, I think, Sébastien, that you were talking about, right? There's something so important to the human spirit about placing time into a material, about building meaning by imbuing it, right, with time or like a new option. And so then when we're thinking about what might you do with a 3D printer, I think we're approaching it with that same mindset, right? How can this tool bring meaning to what we do, and not only maybe speed up production?
That really it made my next question sort of invalidated, because I was going to ask what do you see as the timeless approach, but it really does seem to be that hand.
Yes, exactly.
But is there anything else that may be a timeless textile?
A timeless, well, I mean, I think human beings need design, textile, art that matters to us, right? I mean, Sébastien's talking about, like, this is from my grandmother, this is love. And so I think when a part of what we're very excited about in having textiles at Parsons, right? Again, we have 3 years of graduates. This is a very new program bringing textiles back to Parsons, is creating a space where students are designing, and kind of the original premise is that what they're making should impact somebody's life in a way that really does matter, right? And whether that's building a relationship with a family member, whether it's repositioning our relationship to the environment through new material, it is relational in that sense. And I think that relational quality of design is absolutely timeless. And I think when we lose it, we end up with the kinds of manufacturing overproduction that we currently have, that were problems, right? We need to go back to relationships in how we think as designers.
Absolutely. Oh, that was amazing. Thank you both so much for your presentations and for all of your, time and energy today. Thank you to our sponsors and to SAQA for hosting us. This recording will be available on YouTube in the next week and next Wednesday. So thank you so much. And once again, if you're interested in purchasing the journal and learning more, we've put additional links into the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining us.